Tene tatanda yilam desam genone lam je kapso papa. Tela yon tumo don tumo main be lam ni ye be no ne tumo main be lam. Tumo main be lam tela ta chitang sachi ge on de sena tsawe sachi tela. Namba nga ye be na ne tangbo ta yentong ge tawa drupe ge namba la sachi namba go de ta shusimbarela. Tene ta te jesu yentong to mentembe tawa te la tene te te tang garwa temba te la sachi namba chusam yebe na ne ta tanong hadu cha la tene kyuni ji shusimbarela. Tā tērīng tānda gōmu kāpsu pāpa la, tēne sācī chūsampā, tā tē lōngi trūpu ki tsul tēmbā tēlā, lōng tēlā yāng tā tānda sācī chūsampā tēlā sācī nāmbā sōm yabā. Tēne tē pālchir tā hindu kālchīwā ndabu tēlā, tēne chīdū dhamma tē tānda hlōpa āriyān devi ge, tene tandam demba yentong namba la tenye pa rangtong mayimbar tenye pa jaytang tene tejendo njambal senje ga nangdo tembar zepa jaytang tene tejendo nyangin depa chimbun do inongdo temba te som yeba nangne tene ta tanda tandam demba te tangbo loba ariyan devi jedu dhamma le sumba te tene tan tambe nelu de tene hindu dewa chenpo tang tene lana mepa tang chuchi dradang tempa la soba sunwa yinpi cher na te tongpa tongchung ka namba la sunwa ma yinpa tene sarcha ye hiji namba tang tempa sunwa re se te tongpo te tempa.
In the three main chapters on ground, path, and fruition, what we're talking about now is the chapter on the path. And the chapter on the path has a section on the... Excuse me. The section on the path, is that okay? Yeah. Okay, the section on the path has the instructions on the common view and on the uncommon view, the common path and the uncommon path. And so at the moment we are talking about the uncommon, special, particular path. And this discussion of the uncommon, special path has 5 root sections or 5 root topics. And so the first of these is the proof of the other empty view, the Shentong view, and that had 9 different sections. And then following that, there were 13 sections that teach the problems with the views that contradict the Shentong, the other empty view. And so among these, this morning, we talked about 12 of them. And so we've come to the 13th. And so this 13th one is discussing several citations, and these are really quite important citations to discuss, really extremely important citations. And the first of these is a citation from the Master Aryadeva's compendium, Lamp Compendium of Practice is how Hopkins translates it. Lamp Compendium for Practice. And then the second one is, and what this says is that the ultimate truth is the other empty. It's not the self-empty. The second of the three parts of this 13th section. So the 13th section has 3 parts. The first is the quote from this about Aryadeva, and the second is a discussion from the reciting the names of Manjushri, the Manjushri Nama Samgiti. And the third section is a discussion from the Parinirvana Sutra. So of these 3 sections, the first of them is the discussion of from Master Aryadeva about the nature of the ultimate truth. And what he says here is that the way the ultimate truth is that it is great bliss. It is the unexcelled, and it is the sound of the Dharma. And so here he is saying that it is not just mere emptiness, rather it is the other emptiness that has the clarity and wisdom that he's teaching.
Tene ta teji sachi ibate tan jambal jin senyong ta proje ban jambal senji ge tan te yang tene rangtong ge nambal mani pa yihi namba ngai so zo ta bu de song yo ji ta kam der song yo ara la tene tel jambal senji ni sumbe ge tan te la sachi namba chu song yo pare ta te na ne sachi dangbo ta 당보 니 당보 니바 숨바 예바티 다치 당게 데네 초나 도지기 야르효아 데네 상지 좀 된데지 마르숨바 라소바다 덴조제 옌동 그다와다 텀바 데어히비 니보 예바라 템바임바 송아레라 데네 지당게 파반 잠발진 생용도 버제바티 다저도 상지 좀 된데지 숨발은 도도 화 넘버 2에 변하네 되네 뭐 지디 탐지가 나네 현도 가르쳐와대 단 점벌진 생용도 버제바세 다 델라 단다 주지바 만부게 점벌 생지디 향단용 난게요라 되네 대배 가르쳐와 난게요래 대 가르쳐와 나와대 준생 가르르세나 히랍다 이힘 별외게 짜와다 버제 임바 다 디게 땡땡라요 파반 점벌이 용지 오다 파반 점벌이 용디 이힘아이 오임바르 템바리에
The second section deals with the teachings in the reciting the names of Manjushri, and what this is that it is not definitely it cannot be. It should not be known to be a self-empty text, a Rangtong text. Rather, it primarily teaches the 5 wisdoms. And so in this teaching of the 5 wisdoms here, there are 13 different points that are made. And of these 13 different points, the first, second, third, and fourth here are basically questions that Vajrapani is asking of the Bhagavan Buddha, and then the Buddha giving an answer to them. And these questions and answers are very much in accord with the other empty view. They say that there is Buddha nature. And so with this reciting the names of Manjushri, in terms of the words of the Buddha, there are the sutras and the tantras. But in all of the different classes of tantra, something that is considered very important is this text reciting the names of Manjushri. In fact, it's considered so important that many practitioners will recite it. And so what is the reason for considering this reciting the names of Manjushri to be so important? The reason is because it is like the root for developing our knowledge and wisdom. And so reciting it helps us develop that. And that is because that is the essence of Manjushri. The essence of Manjushri is the 5 wisdoms.
Tene ta teya cerdo ta sachi ngabani zonte tene yihi ngaten yorala yihi ngate cerdo ta sanji ngambar zobar sanji pe kapsu tene jeyo menchimba rogre sena rogmare sanji je tene sanji je chemba sanji je zewa sanji je nuba nubi yen ten zo ta ngaran zo ngambar zo par sangji ni yungi yorela tene teya yihire 다 디 자와데 가나 두고 이거래서는 챔비 이히 된 친구 그래 마도 되네 만신이나 되네 대답이 엔텐데 용기요 말해 챔비 이히 되라 모고 온드시는 넘버 8 레딩에 도포고 온드시나 텔 이와요래라 이와 두바 시나 간데르세나 제타완 챔비 이히도 진해반 챔비 이히세 제타와티 추탐지 진내루 마노르와 주통지 랑hin지 오동바 임바데 현게 요아르베스는 상지 좀 된데 지다와 인도 zehin 현게 요아르라 지다와 진비히 다 지다와 동바니 진내루된 친이 되네 둘자 생진 탐지 대두다 되네 다 딘돌웨게 둘라 밥마밥라소베게 네출티 차상티 진해바데 망부 요아르라 대 챙게르베 동반이 인두들 찌오면 찌반데 로그 두르자 생긴게 다 두모도 반도그레베 세나 도그 마레 산지 좀 된데지 두르자 간 둘웨둘라 파파 두르자 된 두르버시 탑 강인바 라소바 탐치 살보르 챙게요라 대라 진해 반침비 히시 지단가 온드세나 제타와 침비 히도 진해 반침비 히 넘바 니요레
From the fifth of these sections onwards, what is primarily taught is wisdoms, the 5 different wisdoms. So, when the Buddha completely awakens to perfect awakening, at that point, does he just know nothing? Is it just blankness, nothingness? It's not like that, actually. The reason is the Buddha has, if not, there wouldn't be any activity of the Buddha. But there is activity of the Buddha. The Buddha has the activity. He has knowledge. He has love. He has power. And so when he completely awakens to perfect Buddhahood, then there is wisdom. And what is the root of this wisdom? The root of this wisdom is knowing. If he didn't know anything, there wouldn't be any wisdom. And so he has to know something. And so the essence of that wisdom, in essence, that wisdom is all one thing. But in terms of its technical term here, in terms of its in terms of how we perceive it, in terms of its aspect, there are many different classifications that we can have of it. But in general, if we classify it, there are 2 different types of wisdom that the Buddha has. There's the wisdom of knowing the nature of things, and there is the wisdom of knowing how things are in their multiplicity, it's sometimes said. And so of these 2 things, the first of these is the wisdom of knowing the nature of things. And so this wisdom of knowing the nature of things, knowing things as they are, that is knowing the nature of things perfectly as it is, knowing that the essence of things is empty. And so knowing that is the wisdom that knows things as they are, knows the nature of things. And then once the Buddha knows the nature of all things, then he sees all of the pleasures and all of the pains that sentient beings face. And he also sees when it is time to, when the time has come to help the sentient beings, when they can receive the help, and what the methods to help them are. That is what we call the wisdom that knows the multiplicity of phenomena, knows things as many as they are. And so here, what this means is that when the Buddha knows the nature of things and knows that things are empty, that is not just a blank nothingness. It's not a question of not knowing anything at all. It's not a question of being completely unable to help. Actually, the Buddha knows how to help. He knows when it is time to help. And he knows the methods for helping. And so that knowing that is what we mean by the wisdom that knows things in their multiplicity. And so these are the 2 types of wisdom there are. The wisdom that knows things as they are, and the wisdom that knows the multiplicity of all phenomena.
Tene tate yihi ni de jepra yena yihi nomba nga sungri warala yihi nomba nga de ta tangbo kapndar tembe ga on sena chuji enji yihi ta je ten yore chuji enji yihi sena ta ti chetawa chemba ta jinhe ban chembe ga non chetawa chuni ke nelu chuji yende chetawa yindo tongchan ne ngun senpa salburn chenpa yinpa chena chuji yenji yehi sungui warala. Tene ta teji so yehi nipa te la kari shogi warala sena melon tabi yehi sungui warala. Tene 다티 멜론 답이 이히데 드네 체가 제타완 쳔바다 체가 진해반 쳔베게 넘반다보다 드네 똥바가 온도세나 추지에는 나와요 말이데 이나연 살와가 온도세나 드네 페르나 멜롱가 논도 주니 샤와 옌도 멜롱가 논도 주니 샤르두 주니데 마드 옌도 멜롱가 논도 샤르게 예바제다 멜롱가 논도 샤와 테야 만디 바 소소르 살와 옌도 쳔바인 베체나 제타와용 진해바용 쳔바인 베체나 멜론타비 이히 니바 다 이히 숨바데 소소르토비 이히 숨게요라 소소르토비 이히 데 칸데지레세나 데니 멜롱가 논데 샤와 나힌게 데니 제이 토니 게 넘발라 샤르송 인두 파 제이 노르로주 예반다보 딘로주 예반다보 살보 메반다보 쳔그레베세나 텐데 쳔게 마레 단데 진해반 쳔비 이히게 차니rel라 진해반 쳔비 이히게 차니 소소르토바데 카 임바데 만리바 살보르 쳔바 데네 페르나 카도 온다보지 나 카르볼 쳔바 세볼 쳔바 마도 다제 노른로지 예반다보 마임바 다 데타보 히징 보통지 만리바 살버르 지바이 차니 데라 소소르토비 이히 숨바
And so we have these two types of wisdom, and if we then classify them even further, we have 5 wisdoms. And so there are these 5 wisdoms. Well, what are they? The first of these wisdoms is the wisdom of the Dharma expanse, the Dharma Dhatu wisdom, the wisdom of the Dharma expanse. What is this wisdom of the Dharma expanse? Well, this is the wisdom that knows things as they are. And so this is knowing the Dharma nature, the Dharma expanse. It is knowing the empty aspect of things and then recognizing that empty aspect, knowing that empty aspect. So that is the first wisdom, the wisdom of the Dharma expanse. And then there is the second wisdom. Well, what is the second wisdom? The second wisdom is the mirror-like wisdom. And this mirror-like wisdom is half the wisdom of knowing things as they are and half the wisdom of knowing the multiplicity of phenomena. So it's half and half. And so in terms of emptiness, the empty aspect is nothing other than the Dharma expanse. But there is also the clear aspect. In the clear aspect, it is like a mirror. When you have reflections that appear in a mirror, those reflections cannot be proven to be anything, and yet they all appear. They appear very clearly, not mixed up, and they appear distinctly. And so that aspect of it is the wisdom that knows the multiplicity of phenomena. And so that is the second wisdom, the mirror-like wisdom. The third type of wisdom is the discriminating wisdom. So what do we mean by discriminating wisdom? Discriminating wisdom means that it's like when everything appears in a mirror. Everything is emptiness, but although it is emptiness, everything appears clearly, and there's no mistaking what it is. There's no mistake, there's no mixing things up with each other. Everything appears, there's nothing that's unclear about it anyway. And so this is knowing the multiplicity of things. This is knowing how things are. Knowing how the relative phenomena are. And so that's what the discriminating wisdom is. And so when you have the discriminating wisdom, then whatever appears, you know very clearly, unmixed. You don't mix it up and unmistaken. If something is white, you know it to be white. If something is yellow, you know it to be yellow. You don't make any mistakes about it. And so in this way, all the things that can be known are seen clearly and distinctly. And so that is the third type of wisdom, the discriminating wisdom.
Tene ta te jesu yibate nyomba niji hi sungi warala. Nyomba niji hi sona tene tanda tene te 제타완 침비 히도 진예반 침비 히니기노네 제타완 침비 히 수수도바 드니제 단당 알아서 수수지오 탐지게 초민다 종인다 가두다 인생라소바 샤르게 요아레디 이나에 대탐지 대한징고라 찍바임바 ten tambala nelu tamji jipa yimba Rangthenpa tela nyamba niji yehi sumba jayda teni ngaba te shawatupi yehi yindu tela teni nyamba ni risona teni tenda andabo kanya mendrupa teni kanga danda andabo norni teni kanga chundo andabo je yungribe sena yungumare teni tiige zangbo la zangbo ngemba la ngemba teni ti zongi tenzo zangbo ngemba la njorma songa ngemba zangbo la njorma songa teni jine susu shawa tong tenda tendo tenam nrup topa yimbe cherna teni shawa tupi yihi te cherdo yihi naba nga songyore.
The fourth wisdom is the wisdom of equality. And so when we talk about the wisdom of equality in terms of being either the wisdom that knows things as they are or the wisdom that knows the multiplicity of phenomena, this is considered a part of the wisdom that knows things as they are. Normally, we ordinary individuals, when we see things, we think that some things are great and some things are bad. We think that some things are fine and some things are lousy. We think that some things are big and some things are small. But actually, in terms of how they actually are, everything is really the same in its nature. In the ultimate nature, everything is the same. And so knowing that is the wisdom of equality. The fifth type of wisdom is the all-accomplishing wisdom. So when we realize emptiness, does this mean that everything becomes the same and it all becomes some sort of a big blur where we can't distinguish anything and everything gets confused and mixed up? That's not how it is. We see what is good as being good. We see what is bad as being bad. We see that, and because of that, we are able, the Buddha is able to do the appropriate actions at the time that they need to be done. And so in this way, this is the all-accomplishing wisdom. And so in that way, we have the 5 wisdoms which are taught.
Tene tatin jambal senji ganando tene yihi ngati susu rimba yendola tene song yuare la ngambar zo bar sanji be kapsala yo yihi ngati yuare la yihi ngati njung ge jote ya tene tanda yisenji ge nekala yaba yimbe cherna tene tati tene tomba tongjo ma yimbe solte tene jambal senji ganando song yuare 다대야 예 단다 마답 내갑스 혀와다 드니 답 내갑스 중아 될라 야 다저도 마답 내갑스 드니 넘버 히바 추지 답 내갑스 이히 나라 네처 바다 드니 성요래라 드니 데 단다 티 진출비가 넘바다 뎀베 온드시나 남히 데 만출비 내루 디 ngooti tene yihi ke namba yimbe cherna da perna tangbo kunjirel da hiba tamchi dan sen tamchi ke tsawa salhin riba kanga salhin riba tamchi nyungi ye de kunji number hiba rela kunji number hiba te tanda marab neka so tene namhi rindo ke tsawa te kandere sen kunji namhi ke ngo tomba tong ronghin salwa ni ye benane tene salwa te mato tomba te ngui ma zimba la tene tene trul non pacha non ambo charne trul tene te trulba la tene kenji namhi kenji lenjor kenji te ta na ti ngo ranghin ki tomba imba te to na tene chuen hi chuji inji ne lu te to ge yore ti cherna kenji ne churba chuji inji hi sungu yore.
In the reciting the names of Manjushri, the 5 wisdoms are all taught in order. And so when we awaken to complete and perfect Buddhahood, we have the 5 wisdoms that appear. And the cause of these 5 wisdoms is actually something that is present in us at the stage of being an ordinary individuals. And so here in the reciting the names of Manjushri, it's taught how this is not just mere emptiness. So here, during the ground, during the impure time, and during the pure time, we have these two different periods, right? The impure period and the pure period. And during the impure period, we have 8 consciousnesses. During the pure time, these are transformed into the 5 wisdoms. And so if we are a little bit confused, if we are slightly mistaken, then that is consciousness. And if we are unconfused, then that is unconfused and unmistaken, that is wisdom. And so here, when we have the all-ground consciousness, the all-ground consciousness is like the root of the mind. And so it's the root of the mind because it is like clear awareness. So this is the basis, the ground of the mind, the all-ground consciousness. And it is when it is impure, then the 6 consciousnesses arise within it. But its essence is emptiness. Its essence is empty, but it is naturally clear. Yet we only see the clear, and we do not realize that it is empty. We do not know that it is empty. We are mistaken in that way. And then that is when it is the all-ground consciousness. And then when it is purified, when we recognize the empty nature of it, then we have realized the Dharma expanse. We have realized the Dharma Dhatu. And at that point, the all-ground consciousness is transformed into the Dharma expanse wisdom.
Tene ta te jeso nipa te melon tabi hire la. Melon tabi hire nam hi kan nature ba la ta te si kepa na gomba te si mandawa yore. Tene kepa kahi ki song na kun yi la namba ni su chi ne kun yi tang kun yi number hi ba ni su chi ne. Tene kun yi ki nam noa harwa ti ki namba te melon te nature ba te melon tabi hi sun jor war sumba yore la. Tene kama pa sumba Rangtong doji ke tanda tene nam hi yi ji ten chu nang tu song na tene kun yi te jik tu yo. Ta te la jitang ke ten reba te yore kun yi la pacha yo pa tang kun yi noa harwa ni yore te yin na ya te kun yi jik tu yo. Tene nye la nye mombi ye tang tema topi ye se lamsong namshi namto jewe ki tsawa chupa tema topi ye sungkin je ya ne tene tanda tene melon tabi ye ki te tema topi nye la namba nisu ye ba nye tang tema topi ye tang namba nisu ye ba na ne tema topi ye ne churba te tanda melon tabi ye ki sang yore la Dema topi yi singin te kun yi ngo ma hi pa la tenne tenen chul tenen chul ba te njoma te chul ne nam to nam hi number topa tong number topa ma bo che ge yo re la number topa ma bo che we ge gyun da bo te la tenen dema topi yi sung tu ta te ne chur sung tu te la tenen chu tang chi salaman ri bar ya menon tabi yi hi tin jung ge yo
The Rangtong the
no hi hi ji ba
Nashiship Japatilla and Dumba Dilla and New Dematai and Dematai Chilega.
Dema chele din lamsong dema thot din number to ba mo chewa
Okay.
ta nam to mo chewe hi ji un bon da ji so
The second wisdom here is the mirror-like wisdom. And so what is this mirror-like wisdom? Well, when we talk about the mirror-like wisdom, where does it come from? There are actually many different opinions. Different scholars have different types of opinions about where it comes from. Some scholars say that the all-ground consciousness, the 8th consciousness, has 2 different parts. There's the all-ground and the all-ground consciousness, they say, and that the part that is where the thoughts all appear, that when it's transformed becomes the mirror-like wisdom. However, the Third Karmapa Rangtong Dorje, in his treatise Differentiating Consciousness from Wisdom, says that the all-ground consciousness is just one thing. Of course, it does have the 2 aspects of being a storehouse for the latent tendencies, and it also has the aspect of being the ground on which appearances arise. But he says that that's all one in terms of the transformation. But what he does split into two is the seventh consciousness, the seventh afflicted consciousness. And so he splits that into two different parts. And these two different parts are the afflicted mind and the immediate mind. So the afflicted mind is just thinking me, a constant sense of thinking me. And the immediate mind is the part of the mind that makes thoughts always happen. It always creates more and more thoughts. So because of the immediate thoughts, immediate mind, we always have thoughts that immediately happen, run one right after another. And so that is the immediate mind. So the seventh aspect, and so that when that immediate mind is transformed into wisdom, then that is what becomes the mirror-like wisdom. So of the two aspects of the seventh consciousness, the afflicted mind and the immediate mind, it is the immediate mind that becomes transformed into the mirror-like wisdom. And so this is, what is happening is that when we do not know when we have the all-ground consciousness and we do not really know its nature and we're confused, then we have all sorts of different thoughts that arise. And the cause of all those thoughts arising is this immediate mind. And so when that immediate mind is transformed, then we can see everything clearly and distinctly.
Tene ta tejendo sumba susurto be hita yiba nyambani ji hita ngaba sawatu be hita ta kepa tamji gomba mountain bakaya yo marela tene susurto be hite ta ngaranso tupa hiji number hipa ta namto mandawa njo andige tupa hiji number hipa de nature bate susurto be hila nature ne tene yihite ngandu churbe kapsala yo susur mandi par salawar cheba te susur topi yihi. Tene te jesu nipa te nyamba niji yihi te tak taki kontu hiba yendo. Tene nye mompi la da dang yen den zamba, da yen den zamba re la. Da den zamba tambo yeba je la kogi yuwa re la. Te nature nam higa kapsa la. Te nature ndo du da den zamba te hai ndo du. Tene tamchi nyamba nide zait taba yunga yeba yen. Nyamba niji yihi sihi sumba tang. Tene sawatupi yihite ta go ngayi number hipa te nature ne. Make number hipa, nawe number hipa, naye number hipa, che number hipa, luji number hipa. Luji number hipa te go nga. Tene ta tiga tanda kanga make zung tongwa tong nawe datu pato. Naye tatsurwa to, che ro nyongwa to, luji riza nyongwa la sopa, chawa chige yuwa rela. Tene nature be kapsa laya, tene senchi tamchi je dedu tong sorwa la sopa. Tamchi chene, druza senchi tamchi je tanji. Shawa drup topa yinpe chena, shawa drup yihi te, yihi nga. Ta junrege, mada neka sa number hipa tsu ji. Ta neka sa yihi nga yi rangin tong, tenpa ta te tabi yuwa rela. Tene junsen te ichir nan jamban senji ka nangdo, yihi nga te salbur rimba yindola. Tangbo chu ji yinji yihi, tene nipa tanda melon tabi yihi, sumba susur topi yihi, yiba nyamba niji yihi, nga ba susur topi yihi te rimba yindo, song yeba yinpe cherna. Tene chuni ge nelu de tomba tongchong ma yinpa, de salbur jamban senji ka nangdo ten yuwa re.
The third wisdom is the all-accomplishing wisdom. The fourth is, the third wisdom is the discriminating wisdom. The fourth wisdom is the wisdom of equality. And the fifth wisdom is the all-accomplishing wisdom. And here there are not any disputes among all the scholars. You're probably relieved to hear that. Discriminating wisdom, everyone agrees, is when the sixth consciousness, the mental consciousness, is transformed. All of our thoughts happen in the sixth mental consciousness. And so when these are transformed, they become the discriminating wisdom that sees things, everything clearly, knows things clearly and distinctly. And so that is the distinctive one. Then next we have the fourth of the wisdoms, the wisdom of equality. And as we described before, the seventh consciousness has the aspect of the afflicted mind. And so that is thinking, clinging to an idea of self and other. Or actually, you could even say it's perceiving self and other. Perceiving self and other. And so when we perceive or cling to a self, then that is the afflicted mind. And when that perception of a self is transformed, and we can see that everything is equal, there's equality of everything, then that is the wisdom of equality. The last of the wisdoms is the wisdom of the all-accomplishing wisdom. And so this is the transformation of the 5 gates. So the consciousness is the 5 gates. So we have the eye consciousness, the ear consciousness, and the nose consciousness, the tongue consciousness, and the body consciousness. And these are the 5 consciousnesses of the 5 sense gates. And so all of these, when they are transformed, because when they're transformed, we are able to see things. So the eye is able to see things, and the ear is able to hear, the nose is able to smell, the tongue is able to taste, and the body is able to feel. And these all are transformed, and they all have their own function that they do. And so when they're transformed, the Buddha is able to then see all the pleasures and all the pains, all the feelings of all sentient beings, and he's able to know how to help those beings. And so that thus it becomes, he's able to accomplish benefit for beings. And so in this way, it is the all-accomplishing wisdoms. And so in this way, during the impure period, we have the 8 consciousnesses. During the pure time, we have the 5 wisdoms. And these are all taught clearly and in order the 5 wisdoms are all taught clearly and in order in the reciting the names of Manjushri. And so the first one that is taught is the Dharma expanse, Dharma Dhatu wisdom. The second is the mirror-like wisdom. The third is the discriminating wisdom. The fourth is the wisdom of equality. And the fifth is the all-accomplishing wisdom. And so by teaching this, it says that the way that the Dharma nature is not just merely emptiness. It's not that, but it has the clarity.
Tene tate yang tate sachi ngaba tupa damba jepa guba ngala yihi ngati susur jambal senji ke none tembe ke tsulte son. Tien jambal senji ke none yihi ngati temba tsomdo yo mazi 사치 주박 나도 되는 점벌 생기가 놓는데 이행하라 션살이요래 이행하데 자체 보임바 이행하데 동바 동중 땡오 매바 마임바 이행하데 용다바 임바 이행하데 조도 줄바 임바 이행하데 나란초가 다 톱지긴 레뷰 온드잖아 이행하데 톱고바 임바다 산지라 잡순도 와도 션살을 값을라요 이히 되게 자와라 때네 다 대바도 고르트 대바도 구바지 구비 준센라 때네 되는 잠발 생지가 놓는데 추진 도진 초신 대 다데데 이행하라 름바 이겐달라 션살을 제바 용 요아레라 티처나 이행하데 템바 점도요 마지 이행하데 여바 점도요 마지 잠발 생지가 놓는데 땡여 잠발 생지가 놓는데 땡 여바 점도요 마지 되는 잠발 생지가 놓는 이행하라 셔종 살이여 바다 된데래.
And so in that way, the 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th section teach these 5 wisdoms. This is how the 5 wisdoms are taught in the reciting the names of Manjushri. But not only are these 5 wisdoms taught in reciting the names of Manjushri, also there is in the 10th section, there is the prostration to the 5 wisdoms. The 5 wisdoms are very important. The 5 wisdoms are not just mere emptiness. It's not just blank emptiness. This is something that we need to attain, and it's the result that we can attain. The result we can attain is the 5 wisdoms. And so for that reason, when we prostrate to the Buddha, it's the root of being able to prostrate to the Buddha is these 5 wisdoms. Because of the 5 wisdoms, we can have faith. We can have wisdom. And so here, not only are the 5 wisdoms taught, not only is it said that the 5 wisdoms exist, but even we prostrate to them. And so, so basically it's saying that we prostrate, I prostrate to these 5 different wisdoms.
Tene 다 대지에서 사치 주지 바다 주니 바다 다 주상파티 다 담바나네 되니 다 대답을 동어 된줄라 이치지 그거리 되니 이치지 내 야부용 그래서 맹어 나오나 인지 성요래.
Following that, in the 11th, 12th, and 13th section, it gives us the advice. The advice is that we need to have confidence or believe these instructions and that these instructions are important and good for us.
다 대이 점발 천지가 농도 다 돈이 somebody 되네 점발 천지가 농도 이히가 땡에 베기 준생 된주 자상 이 대월히 비님보도 이히 땡에 베기 준생 자상한테 송하래라 다 대지스 사치 somebody 너 냥엘인데 베농도 용 되니 다 대템바 너 냥엘인데 바 첨부 대현도 너 냥엘인데 바 첨부 짱바만 임바 되니 너 몸부가 농도 야 되니 상지라 이히 여바 이히기 자와 여바 다 대답을 땡나요 와라 되니 오메겐도 오메기 용 몸부가 농도 라인 땡요래 소.
Following that comes the third of these sections. If you remember, we had the first section about the first section about Aryadeva. The second section was about the reciting the names of Manjushri, and now we've come to the third section, which is the Mahaparinirvana Sutra. And so this is said often. This is said a lot in the Mahaparinirvana Sutra, and it's also said in many other sutras. It is said that the Buddha has wisdom. There's a root to this wisdom. And so this is also taught in the treatises of the Middle Way.
되네 다 대전도 단다 다조 노다 땡주 첨부 땡주가 나도 되네 조 가리 템바리세나 되네 상지엘라 되네 조 되네 연된다 템바 상지엘라 잘위 연된 순주 짜니던 템바라 땡요라라 잘위 연된 순주 짜니던 템바데 되네 다조 첨바다 이히기 차네 템바레라 되네 다대야 이히기 차네 단다 톱죠 민지바 예 만지비 추 좁지 데 달위엔데 순주 짜니 송요 대나네 다대 톱죠요 온드세나 되네 다 단다 달외에 톱줘요 알아라 톱줘보티 다 나란소 소시지오다 되니 대전도 년투동 롱잘 남지 힘부터 힘부터 되니 네 쳇버지 망본 쳇바인 베잖아 되니 네다 네 마인 베침부터 간데 야보인 바 간데 두보인 바 된소 살보르 챙기야 바다 되니 현재 네 지스트렘 톱 되네 흐마 되네 간데세네 흐마 간데 중앙 되네 흐마 깔바 하무가 되네 네츠통지 제다와 인도 제바 되네 베르나 존투진진 좀 파파 맹걸지 보다비나야 되네 대답은 친 못봐 다 가히 친 톱라 가히 친 못봐 nenjin ne tenzo chen mato pa yuwa re de zopu sonji chamten de ji jetawa yin de chen pa yin pa tsina nenjin ne jisu ten pa chen pa la so pe ta tanda top jo yuwa pa la sang yuwa re
jitawa chen pa re be jitawa yana jinne
jitang ge chen pa chen chan ne ba jitawa to jinne ba
And so primarily, what is it that is primarily taught in the sutras and in the treatises? What is primarily taught is that the Buddha has wisdom. The Buddha has qualities. The Buddha has qualities, and of these qualities, one of these types of qualities are what are called the 32 results of separation. Here, this is a term. This means that when you take away all the stains, that there is the result that comes out, the wisdom that comes out. So that's what we mean by results of separation. So here we have the results of separation, and these are primarily knowing. These are primarily the aspect of wisdom. And so in terms of this, in terms of the Buddha's qualities, we talk about the 10 powers. We talk about the 4 fearlesses, and we talk about the 18 unshared qualities. And these all together make up the 32 qualities of separation. And so of these, there are the 10 powers. Now, the 10 powers are something where ordinary individuals or practitioners on the listener or the Theravada path, or those on the self-Buddha or pratyeka Buddha in Sanskrit, the self-Buddha path, can't really know these. These are, there's things that they cannot know. There's places that points that are difficult points that they cannot know. And so these are things that the Buddha knows. The Buddha knows what is possible and what is not possible. He knows what is good, what is not good. He is able to know all that. And so that is the first of the 10 powers, the power of knowing what is possible and what is not possible. And then there is also the power of remembering previous places. And so this is remembering what it was like in previous times, in previous lives. So remember, many, many eons and eons ago, what was it like? Knowing the way things were at that time. And of course, there are some people who can remember a little bit, but they can't remember like the Buddha. The Arhat Maudgalyana could remember a few, but he could not remember everything the way the Buddha can. Or some other people could know some, but they couldn't know it all. And so this is a quality of the Buddha, having the wisdom of being able to know everything as they are. And so that's remembering the second power, remembering previous places.
Tene ta tejendo ta minjipa on de sena minjipa ya song yo re la. Tene te je la me no de minjipa nang khor de singe ye. Tene per na singe te tene ta anda boda zai anda boda tom anda boda. Tene so solayon nji maguba ta khora ziji da dembe ngone de chog yo re la. Pe te yendo zobu sonje ta ngaran su su ji o tamal pa ta yintu to rong sonje tam ji yang kap ka la ngarang ge tombe chu hie ba yin na yan dan ji tin ji ne lu hie ba yin na yan a ta ti nor yo ji re som be to pa yung re te nor ni me te ta hie sa te yang go kor ge re som be ji to ta bo yung re te yin na yo zobu sonje jam den de tum chen ba te be hin do top dong den ba yin be chen na Rangtong to pong apon so ba tang ni mo ba cha sa pa sar wa yin so ta ting ni tel zhen yo ma re ba ngarang ma pong za ni yo ma re teni ma ti chen ba te yen do Rangtong to top apon so ba ni kang ga chi ge re se yar ji gi du tel a ta ti hi yo ma re ti ni te chak zin do bo ji chong song sam ba ti de ji to da ba za ni yo ma re Tene yenden to lam dong lam ji kei tenpa la menji pa sunga yuwa yenden to nda cherang lam te yapu je drup na ti peng re ta ti lam ti ndo tuk re song di tel ngay lam lopa chay se na lam yapu ten yuwa chay se na lam lopa ten ju nyen ka yuwa re kang ten yuwa na ten ri e yuwa na song pe ke topa tang ji to yuwa ma ta lam yung tapa yinpa la yinpa rin chen pa Tene yenden to lam ji kei tenpa la menji pa se tu yenden to tene lam ji kei te tene ta ti ge chirang ge nda pangu gre da nda ndi ge parchi che gre da se te sun du te la o kap ka la kei ma yin pa che la kei yin pa tene tene nor ne ti me ten go kor tang ya pan ra bo che on se gre te zo pa song ji jam ten de la tindi ge nyen ka tan ji ran ra bo za ne yo ma re la teacher na le yenden to lam ji kei tenpa la menji pa hiya dan tenpa ta tindi song yo re te ta bo te su ge top ji chung re se na hi ge top ji chung yo re
It's also taught that the Buddha has the qualities of the four fearlessnesses. And in the Supreme Continuum, it says this is like a circle of lions. If you have a circle of lions, they don't need to be afraid of tigers or leopards or any other carnivorous species. There's nothing that they need to be afraid of in any way. They can just stay as they are, peaceful, with no fear or no doubt in any way. And so we ordinary individuals or the listeners or the self-Buddhas, when we are in this world and we're talking about what is the world like, sometimes we think, well, I might be wrong. There's possibility that I might have made a mistake and maybe I'm actually fooling someone here. We might think that way, but the Buddha does not have any, the Buddha has the knows things as they are, out of the power of his knowings. He knows, he has the fearlessness of knowing that of knowing his own benefit of the benefit to himself of the complete abandonment. So he knows that he has given, he knows for himself, I have given up all the afflictions. This ain't a lie. I know this as it is. So there aren't any that I haven't given up. And so this is knowing it, really knowing for himself that knowing for his own benefit that he's given up everything. And also there's the knowing the benefit of himself of the complete realization. It's not a question of, well, maybe I didn't quite get it. Maybe I don't quite know it. I'm not quite sure about it. It's not like that at all. He knows definitely. I have realized everything completely, and I have no fear, no problem about anything. And so that's the second fearlessness, the fearlessness of realizing, the fearlessness of the complete realization that is a benefit for oneself. And then there is the fearlessnesses that are of benefit for others, the fearlessness of benefit for others, of knowing the path. And so it's saying, this is the path. This is the good path. This is the path to practice. And if you practice this, it'll benefit you. It's not like we ordinary people, we'd probably say, well, it'll probably help, but maybe it won't. We're not quite sure. So we don't really know if it's going to happen like that. But this isn't like that at all. The Buddha knows if you follow this path, it will help you, and there's no fear. No one can come up to him and say, this isn't going to be like, it's not like that. And he has complete confidence in it. And so that is the knowing the benefit for others of the real path. And the second is knowing the obstructions on the path for the benefit of others. And this is the Buddha can say, you need to give this up. This is going to make a problem for you. This is going to be a difficulty for you. And so this is knowing exactly what the problem is. Whereas for an ordinary individual, we think, well, maybe it's going to be a problem, but maybe it's not. Or, well, maybe if I say a problem, it's going to be a problem. Maybe I'm actually fooling this person. I'm not quite sure. But the Buddha doesn't have any fear like that at all. The Buddha has no fear. There's no danger that anyone is going to be able to come to say to the Buddha and say, you're wrong. And he's going to say, oh, you're right. There's no problem about that at all. And so in this way, we have these four different fearlessnesses. And these are four qualities of the Buddha that the Buddha has. And so from whose power do these come about? These come about from the power of wisdom.
Yore dina ti tuse chomasu. Tate soni jima kalehi na. Tene tate jisla sungho doji tipane go tene perna sungho doji tipane tene yihite salbur song yore. Yenda tene jehin jepa mena ya tene sungho doji tipike ta ndabula. Wam si yore la. Tene tate tanda ngaranzo sungho doji tipichu nyamlen nangking ke yicha ke tene tita de kahi mambu yore wam singite yige da wam ni yore la tene yenda ke jardar tende ke mambu ngola wam yore la wam ke tenda country sen singite perna ndanda buji yore ba yige ndende da buji yore tiki yige ndende da buji yore tomba da buji yore the conscience is in a tony temperature. The tony jomba in the sense. That tinan the kan you are in a tinan the hum in this hum to you are la. Tinity to good junsinti, tomba tella yihi, yinki, minki gugre, serving tala, eganala, hum to me. Tini wam to yore, tini kalti yihi, the mena jomba the gugre.
What comes after that are the 18 unshared qualities, but we're running out of time, so I can't explain them. And then following that, we have the teachings from the secret mantra Vajrayana about how wisdom is clearly taught. Sometimes in other things, wisdom is not taught as extensively or as greatly, but in the secret mantra Vajrayana it is. It's taught by the word, by the syllables A-wam. So A-wam is like a sign that a lot of people use who practice the secret mantra Vajrayana. practitioners use it. You see it in a lot of places. You see it. You see the symbol join put on a lot of flags. You see a lot of flags and symbols and things that say "e wam." You see it on the front of practice books and stuff. And so, what is the meaning of this word "e wam"? "E wam." Well, the first syllable is "a," and if you look at an "a," it sort of looks like this. It's emptiness. It's a symbol of the word emptiness, and it looks like this. And so here in the middle, it's emptiness. Well, inside this emptiness, the wam is sort of stuck inside the emptiness. And so what this is meaning, the wam is sort of like wisdom. And so like you have to stick the wisdom inside the emptiness. You really have to have the wisdom. So inside the emptiness, you've stuck the wisdom. And so this means that you don't, that you have to have the wisdom. You can't just have the emptiness alone.
Tene ta te tabu ndoda tenju tamji gna ni songyo ba ta tende yimbichin yi ti hin to kalchi ware la tongba tongchu zawani mari tende somre.
And so in this way, it is taught in a lot of sutras and a lot of treatises that wisdom is very important, and we can't just have merely empty emptiness. Okay, we'll leave it here this afternoon, but if anyone has any questions, please come to the microphone.
Rinpoche, you were talking about the sense gates and the transformation of them. What happens to sentient beings that they achieve liberation by seeing? For instance, when the beings in the bardo come to the feasts, or when you emanate, say, as Chinrazi, and they're liberated by seeing you, what's happening to them that's a liberation?
Dikasa Rinpoche de la Gongai number ship and Najurne de la Yeshu Sujuri Yore se. And Sungne Tene Kakala de Tongro se Chires, something Kashe, Pena Barugi Kapsut and Karisaga, Totla, Chendana de la Tene Chen Karisa Tongro Yores, Yana Kakala, and Chenrizik, Namtru Dabuchi, Jena, Consul de la. And they let any tongdro young yores and dig guys.
The tongdro, tudro, yongdro, thinking that in the Mambo Yorba. Then la Chitan Kapkala, then Konza Kalbatan Demba, then Shila Cheperchin and Dembaina, Tikabla, Topa Cheperchin Jilla Young. Yungiyojri de yinaya tanda jitan tongdrol sedu gotsul kandi yore sena nganguma Sweden la chimai Sweden la ro kapsala chetin jai tene ngatana dawa jai som deba yina tene chetin jai yore chetin haja yabu yo mare haja putabo jai yo mare de yinaya memombo le Tel Temota, Tiniti, Nala Kando, Chela Kayore, Ngo de Kare, Tinin Young de Kare, Kahi Dumbo, Kahi Tree, Tako Mandra, the Kaina, the case of Kaina, Zabado, the Makahi Temota, Kahi Yakursi, Kahi Yankursi, Tini Kahi Pardavo, Jap, Tini Tindi, Sinia, Colo, They dig young me yenda like Tana Sunny Tana Tindi Kesavajin, the Kaina, take those. Young Matenzo Leon, Tia, the car, the car. Tinita detail, Tini Makahi, Kitchetin, the cherry, the car. The Tini Namba Sanji Bichu, Tini Sonji took more, the way injured, the Johnson Yor, and the Tanda Yor. Tini Tanda Kayor, Johnson Kayor. Tini tene kale tini tezo chugol hiu ngachu dogu ti yaputi do sone tini ko rimbi chugol hiu tini rimbi ge chudu tini rimbi ge mahon palan drev thog yoro tin thong hi thwa sing tini ji thog
we do have what is called seeing, liberation on seeing, or liberation on hearing, or liberation on tasting. And this is when an individual who has the right fortune, meets the right circumstances, has the right blessings, and then they're able to generate real realization within their beings. And so that's often what we talk about as liberation upon seeing and so forth. But what is it that we really mean? Usually when we talk about liberation upon seeing, what I think it really means is, well, I went to Sweden once, and when I was in Sweden, there was a stupa there. I spent a month in Sweden, so there's this stupa there, and the stupa is really not all that nice a stupa. It's not all that fancy a place, but a lot of people come to it, and they sort of look at it. What's on the inside? What's on the outside? What's on top of it? And they look at it, and what's this strange thing that we see? And so some of them walk around it in a clockwise fashion, some walk around it in the counterclockwise fashion. And so some of them, they maybe take some pictures, and then they go back and they say to their friends, oh, there's this really strange thing up there. You got to go see it. And so these people go, wow, look at this strange thing. Wow, what is that? What is that? And so they ask questions, well, what is this? And then someone says, well, this is a stupa. It's like a representation of Buddha Dharma. It's like the essence of the Buddha's wisdom mind. And so that's what the meaning, like there's a reason why we have it. And they say, oh, wow, there's like this reason and there's meaning behind it. Wow, what is this about? And then they think, hey, maybe that's pretty good. Maybe I should, study Dharma a little bit. And, oh, that's pretty good. And maybe I'm going to practice a little bit. And then they do some practice, and they enter the gate of the Dharma, and they practice. And then eventually they will come to some sort of a result out of it. And so that's what we really mean by liberation upon seeing.
So do the demons say that to each other when they come to the Red Feast?
Margye la margye ane chugi kaso de karso margye chi doa de margye de la ne dudiso ane dundiso letne konso de soso la de rabo keja shege de bes margye la tonde dundiso yongoro dongoro de tne konso de soso la de rabo chige keja rabo goyo de bes
카히제 세나 때고 시그레데 조 만지 데 가르르 세나 데네 나란츠 단진 제비기 쳐도라 단진 제비 쳐도 나란츠 그드니 짜치슈데 까까깔 카히 준노롱제라 베다 셈나 쳔보 넘바 쳔보 요아레데 이나에 텐즈 그 짜치슈데 가든 증거르시 나랑 그 류딘 증거요 나랑 그 류딜테 리소나 다페 두고 준노롱제 때치 라소나에 제벌시로 요 말이라 류디 짜치 흉생게요라 데니티 류디 짜치 흉 점바 쳔보 텔 착바 쳔보 셴바 쳔보 요디 테또 테치 사 데니 그통 데니 세나 데니 당하라 지토안다보다 샘라 dum한다보 가야 메바청나 데 dansin테 생고nem베 따레라 디치들라 데니 나랑 루포틴즈 똑키 데니 텐젤 트릭사 텐텐데 세바 강고라 dancing delusion.
The Red Feast is really, the Red Feast in the Chut practice, the Red Feast is really a way to sever our clinging to a self. And so what we usually consider most important of everything is ourself. Of course, some people have a lot of stinginess and miserliness about all their wealth and jewels, and they want to have a lot of it. But really, when it comes down to it, what's most important to them is their body, their selves. And they think, and when they think about their body, they think, well, rather than anything bad happen to that, it'd be better to give up a little bit of my wealth and something like that. So what's really most important is this body of my own. And then because of that, they have a lot of attachment and clinging to the body. And so then you imagine taking this body and you cut it and you slice it and then you give it. You say, please eat this, drink my blood. And so then in that way, you don't have so much fear, and you don't have if you don't have a lot of fear when you do that, if you don't have a lot of suffering when you do that, or displeasure when you do that, And this is a sign that you're clinging to a self as being suppressed. And so here, imagining that you're slicing and cutting your body and giving it all to all the ghosts and saying, here, eat this, is just really a method to decrease our clinging to a self.
Rinpoche, I have some confusion about the meaning of the term empty of other. And I know that's probably a pretty big topic. So I'd like to ask two very specific questions that might help clarify things for me a bit. First, I understand the teaching, I think, in all of the middle way schools that all phenomena are empty. And then all phenomena are empty of self. Now, speaking again just of the phenomenal world, is it also true that all phenomena are empty of other?
Okay.
That's the first question.
De Kagye chitan de Shentong se ge dunda de shira sabo gogumundo de chitan de os mambo yosere ina de mixe ge tuyo namba ni yores tuyo tambo de chitan umagi umagi tawagi unda china chitamje tomba ni ber sheres ne chitamje daki tomba sheres chitamje daki tomba yina 아니 치탐셰야 아니 생기 통바이나 생기 그냥 통바이나
다기 통바다
다기 통바 생기
나 인지 빵와래라 야포도 다기 통바용래라 인지 통바용래 야포시다도
Yeah, they're empty of both self and other. So that's great, isn't it? They're empty of self and they're empty of other.
Okay. So then, can we say that the crucial point of Shentong is that both the Dharmakaya and the phenomena are empty of other? The phenomena are empty of self, but the Dharmakaya is not empty of self?
네, 데라 션통기 데라베나 데네 션통기 네 데라야네 네 추기쿠다 아니 추탐제 니절로 아니 생기 통배 션통이 임버레
디게 단다 콩그 좋아디 다 도메 발라테네 예메바 생긴 디 도통바 임바다 데라테니 예 통바 임바디 기타게 야보도 데 있나야 연동 생긴게 차이데 된데 말해 연동 생긴 되게 차이데 도 메바다 예야 메발라테니 도 메발라테니 롱통 예 메발라테니 연동 생긴 데 말해 라 연동 생긴 데 간데지레세나 드나라 똥바 임바제다 똥바 마임바제니 똥바 마임바텔라 드는 거 보통지게 똥게 요아레 마도 드네 드나라 제 예더보제 여바 템베게 쳐도라 연동 숭게 렐라 드네 준신 티처나 추지고 생긴데 우봉다보제 도도다보제 도안다보 뱀보다 히빈 넘발라 요 말에디 이나야디 살힌 리반 쳔빙오라 예바탄다 다트링이 나랑기 히에바나긴게 상지게 톱조도 민지바 히에달라소바다 이히 아이 넘발라 요레 상지비가슬 요레 마도 드네 상지비가슬 드네 찌야 메바 드네 동보 나랑스 노아만보 예바드네 나탐 시차상 메반도기 요레 비스나 도기 요 말에 디 상지라 이히 요레 이히 디기 짜와디 단다 나랑스 생지 당지라 예가스 요레 드네 송데바 이히티 요레티 이나야 띵고포 두두 덴룹 넘발레 요그비 준신 요마레 예인당 이히 성둔 주파 숭게 요레 예인당 이히 성둔 주파세나 똥바당 이히 니디 냠도 요초게 요레 마도 디니 드니 이히 예나 똥바 메구바제다 똥바 이히 예나 똥바 메구바제다 똥바 메나 이히 예나 똥바 메구바 똥바 예나 이히 메구바다고 용기 요마레
here in your question, what you're saying is that really, because there's no self, then there's not another. And so in that way, of course, because there's no self, there's no other. But that's not what we mean by other when we say other empty. That's not what the Shen and Shentong means. When we say it's not as a question of there being no self and so there's no other. Of course, that is the way it is, but that's not the point here. And so what do we mean when we say other empty? And so Rinpoche did a Tompa Yinpa and Tompa Ma Yinpa, Tompa Ma Yinpa did
다들 뭐 뭐라 탐지 동바 임발라 되는 추지 거데 대진도 매바르비시나 추지 거데 이히트 매바르비시나 매바 말이 요리.
So we have phenomena that are empty and then things that are not empty. And so what we mean here is that we have the phenomena and we have the Dharma body. And when all these phenomena don't truly exist, but that doesn't mean that the Dharma body itself is nothing. There is a ground, a basis. And that ground, and that's what we mean when we say that, when we talk about it being other empty, when we talk about it being Shentong. And so that means that when we think about this Dharmakaya, when we talk about the Dharma body, it's not like it's a thing that we can find. It's not a solid lump that we can find anywhere. We can't say it's a self. It's not. It doesn't take the aspect of a self or of knowing or of a thing in any way. But rather, it is this clear, aware knowing. And so this clear, aware knowing that is being taught. Like I was teaching earlier today about the 10 powers and the 4 fearlesses. These are the aspects of the 4 wisdoms that when we become a Buddha, they are present. It's not when you become a Buddha. It's not as if there's nothing happening, as if nothing at all. It's not as if now at first there are all of these appearances, and then when you become a Buddha, everything turns into blank, dark nothingness. It's not like that at all. There is this wisdom that the Buddha has, and the root of that wisdom is something that all sentient beings. It's part of our ground. It's part of our basis, and so there is this wisdom, but the way it is it is not something that we can find. It is not a solid thing that we can find. And so here, this is what we mean when we say that it is the union of the expanse and wisdom. It is both empty and it is wisdom. It can be both empty and wisdom together. It's not as if when you have something that's empty, then there's no wisdom, or when you have something that's wisdom, there's no empty. It's not as if there is emptiness, there can't be any wisdom, and if there is wisdom, there can't be any emptiness. It's the two of these together, joined together.
Thank you, Rinpoche. Well, Rinpoche, a couple months ago, I heard a Lama assert that according to the 7th Karmapa, the pramana is considered the ultimate teaching of the Shentong. This surprised me a little bit. I'm wondering if in fact that's true, and if so, why?
Dao kashi ngayon la lama chiki sungba na shinde jaon kamapa kutun dumpa chöda jatsogi sungna dine tsema de shendongi tawa tartupa rabo sungba res. De denpa ina.
단다 당랑 속에 가지바게 지당 그 되네 세말라 저바 뭐 요래 다 주로 강가 저바 뭐 요래 제때 예나양 알아서 가지바게 세마 리중잔수세 다까마바 덤바추다 잔수게 성텔라 베 갈침보는 게 요래라 갈침보나야 데 춤타다 추리 그거는 안주게 배사래시네 갈침보는 게 요래시네 말이 라 당가란수게 념린다 tum바지 거기요 다체니 쩌바잡 쳔마장나얀라 나니 띵엔자는 냠버리가나연다 디니 퇴투바지 거기요래라 디네 줄루 소수게 념린다 tum바지 나요래라 디니 단다 쳔만 넘들 쳔마 리중잔선다보지 이나 디니 쳔마 리중잔수게 나도 디니 쳔마기 양답이 희바다 영답 마인베 마리파 덴주겐 세니 야온데텔 데니 지탕게 샤자 침부게 네루다 데니 오마 옌동 다이 오차자 침보다 오마 옌동니 바치 살차 조르 세바다 카생에 휴바인 샤자 침보 검나 인지 미기 오마 옌동 따와테 고기요 롱동 그 따와 짱바게 데니 샤자 침보 검나 띠지 갈단라보티 지 마데와 인고요 대신도 조바 침보 검나야 옌동 그 따와 고기요 옌동 그 따와 메나 띠지 롱 돈이 짱바게 리피테나 파두페 데보 야보 살보 요레티 이나 용은이 강용 갑슬라 데니 샘 그때는 강용 갑슬라 데니 체라는 바게 다치당 강든 챙게 요지레티 이나 용 강용 갑슬 똥바 똥조 텔 테치칼레 용 요레라 티처나 데니 세마리 윤단수가 나타난다 오마 옌동 따와다 데지 쇼신라야 데지 자르네 송예비 쳇나 나란서 냠리를 빼편보 용 요레
In the Kagye tradition, when we study validity, is sort of one English translation of pramana, which is the Sanskrit term. When we study this text of validity or logic, there are, of course, many different commentaries on this, and each lineage has its own commentary. But in the Kagye tradition, the one that we study is the commentary called the Ocean of Logical Literature by the Seventh Karmapa Chodet Gyatso. And so we consider this text by the Seventh Karmapa Chodet Gyatso to be extremely important. And this is not a question of where we're being partisan and holding on to our own traditions. That's not what it is. Rather, it is that what we need is to study is things that are in accord with our practice. And so on an external level, we are debating and we are studying and arguing, and on an internal level, we are meditating in samadhi. And these two need to meet at some point. And so here we need to bring them together. And so the teachings in the Ocean of Logical Literature are the ones that really bring them together. And so that is why we study it. And so when we study Chodet Gyatso's Ocean of Logical Literature, we study validity, then it tells us what cognitions are right, what is wrong, what is ignorance. And we learn what the characteristics of a correct knowledge, what the characteristics of ignorance are. And so that is something that is very helpful for us when we come to actually practice Mahamudra. And so here, when we talk about the Shentong view, and when we talk about Mahamudra, we consider the aspect of clarity, the aspect of knowing, the aspect of clarity to be very important. And so as I said before, when we practice Mahamudra, it is very important that we have the Shentong view. If we do not have that, if instead we just have the Rangtong, the self-empty view, then it is a little bit difficult. It's not very easy. It's similar when we do practices of Dzogchen. When we do the Dzogchen practices, then we have to have the other empty view. If we don't and we think that everything is just empty, then it is hard. Of course, in terms of logic, it can be easy and good and very clear to think about things being empty, but when it really comes down to time to practice, you may know it in your mind. You've all done a little bit of practice. You must know what it's like to do the meditation. It's just focusing on emptiness alone is rather difficult. And so that is why in the Ocean of Logical Literature, it's taught in a way that joins the teachings on validity with the teachings on the Shentong and the teachings on Mahamudra. And so for that reason, it is very beneficial for us when we practice.
Yes, Rinpoche, I have a question about how we should receive some of this material we're getting. Some of it seems so abstract and far away from experiential references. You know, for example, when it's noted that a particular text, some people classify it as mind only, yet you should actually classify it as middle way, or the very long lists of topics with sublists underneath. So I was wondering how we should receive that, and how does it help us understand the Dharma and further our knowledge experientially of what's being referred to.
Kachu kasu tempa di su kakala tempa di kachu di na kakala tene di kola tes rangi nyamnyong dan tes drawa drawa chas kaka drawa yongyore kakala tene nyamdo mituma di nyamdo na shira tugyo mares shira yongyo mares kakala pena ane shungde mikachiki shungde sinsamba yembala yani mune umapare jawo sumpata yana kapkala ni sabje mambo yopa de rangi mitse de dantes de katado davides de nasula ane chunyamlen che tangangi nyamnyung ke la kandi pengres
다치단게 단다 나란소 그 단네 다 돌봐 히랍잔생 숭주텔라 다 공리 그 타힌 타와 힙힌 힙바 드니 다텔라 페나 보트 첨보제 잠바라 보트 첨보제라 사지만 보고 그래 맞아 드니 거 도도제 이세가는 텔레칼레 가사지라 도그래 이때 소소로 딸드텔라 드니 나라서 드니 사지 만보요 드니 딜 디텐다 텐데 송 요레라 드니 다 나란서 메셀라 간디시 팽그레세나 드니 지당그 다 추가 온드세나 드니 나 내르부터 또 고기요레 드니 딜로 양당 희성든 주 내당도 야보 되고 디텐도 야보 제 검나 드니 담비주 용다바지 용비요 드니 니팅가 온드세나 드니 디상그 프로페서 카히가 드니 오마 랑통 옌통 드니 테닝 갈와 요레시 갈와 요 마레시 히드디 톨로 야보렉도가 레카토 야보 용도
In general, in this text, Dolpopa Sherab Jalsen explains everything in minute and excruciating detail. And so when you do this, you end up with a really big and heavy book. And of course, if you have a big, heavy book like that, you have to have a lot of different topics, a lot of different outline topics to it. Otherwise, if it was just one big topic, it would be even more difficult to penetrate. So when in talking about it, in common explaining it, I have to really say what the meaning of each section is. I'm going to say this is the meaning of this section, this is the meaning of that section. Now, in terms of how this helps us in our daily lives and how this helps us as people, really in terms of the Dharma, what we need to do is we need to realize the meaning of how things are. That's what we need to realize. And so we need to realize that that is the union of the expanse and wisdom. And if we know that and we meditate upon that, then our Dharma practice will go correctly. It'll go very well. In worldly terms, nowadays, there are a lot of professors, and all these professors write papers about there's the Rangtong view and there's the Shentong view. The Rangtong view and the Shentong view are contradictory. And others say, oh, they're not contradictory. And so by having teachings like this, then they all can have more work to do to talk about all this.
Could Rinpoche say a little bit about how he would like us to find a true understanding of this in meditation? Is there any specific meditation or any specific instruction he would give about how to comprehend the meaning of these very complex text analysis and heavy books?
dunda there's a kind of nyam so language mixegi nyaman dabochi inas mixegi anigomtan dabochi mixegi menga yorbet ne da shundinigi ane dun samo de tobuki chero
다텔라 베르나 단당 카신 nga랑 게 휴송 som송라 nga랑 그 샘게 담보 인증식 그래 봐 땡코 용나 예빠 양나 매빠 데 마도 은이게 주니게 내루돈 탐바데 담보네 로라 샤르투요 말에 로라 샤르 메도 데니 데 롱동 그 따왔대나 봐 세이송로다 Yentong tawa tena pa jay songlo tang, teni ti country rindu songlo mambo tang na, teni ti patan, o ta ti nengo ati ngarang song matup nengo ati pachi tendi ji yimba da sambege ngihi jegi yor. Re la teni ti tomba tong noa ni, jitang ka ondo se na tomba tong ubu ni te, yepa tam nepa ni te ngaldre ba, ngalwa re. 예빠 있는 매빠 매인 메롱아 매빠 있는 예빠 인 메롱아 레티 있는 공부 내루라 추지 엔지 내루라 티니까 마인바 야포제 티니 또그센 또그 요아라 티또그 탑라티니 리반 넘바나 초파티니 칼리 송노타나 팅히 히체퍼진 제기 요아라 니히 체퍼진 제 온데 테랑 니히 티타인도 티니 스틱 라마티 ngoti sentinelu ngoti Sentinel ngoti on dit oh lamati ngoti jiti nani huma ngarang song mutong de tende ji ing do ga sambati jeto baje tende yongre la ti ni te je do tank to ba rabo ji yin de ge cheto la de na phat na bi ore tini te je ngarang so kachil te bi no to nang do gamba ni te ngalda yo ore la tini te mangal we cheto la riba na ba na so ba de ba
I think I talked about this yesterday. I talked about how in the way things appear in our mind, we have dualistic clinging. And so we think that things exist or they don't exist. We think that there are things or they're empty. But we don't, and the way that the Dharma nature actually is cannot really appear in our minds. And so for that reason, we first think about the self-empty. We think about it, we come to understand, and we think, oh, that's how it is. Then we study the other empty, we come to understand it, and in this way we think about it a lot, we consider a lot, and then at some point we oh, that's the point, that's what I mean, that's probably how it is, and then there's some sort of a certainty that arises within it. So normally we think that empty and appearing are contradictory, or we think that empty and thing, or exist and not exist are contradictory in some way, that if something exists, then it can't possibly not exist, or if something does not exist, then it can't possibly exist. And so that's how we normally think. But when, in the way things are, in the way the Dharma expanse actually is, it's not really either of those. It's not like that. We need to realize that it's not like that. And so for that reason, we have many different methods of thinking things through logically. And so by thinking them through and using these methods, we are then able to generate some sort of a certainty. And then on the basis of the certainty, we go to a lama and ask them to point out the nature of our mind, and they point out the nature of the mind. And when they do, when they introduce us to the nature of the mind, we think, oh, that's what I learned about last year, isn't it? So that's how it will happen. And so that's why we study in this way. And so often our mind is looking out at external appearances, and then when we need to learn how to turn our mind inwards in meditation, and to see that these are not really contradictory. And so that is why we have many different methods of logic.
I thought for sure you were going to tell me to wait till tomorrow. When you put your watch on, it usually means it's the end. So I'm all messed up now. All right. Could you please elaborate on the transformation of the immediate consciousness? And am I right in thinking that this is a pivotal transformation. More than the others.
The Chetande Demata Igi Nejurgi Kore. Demata Igi Nejurgi and the Yeshis Nejuri Kore test sooner on now. Dema se and the Demata I Nejur the Nenga Cheshu Trabuinas.
Tanda Trulbe Netan Tela, Trulbe Netan Corni, Natan Trulium to tell, Tematai de Tatila Tini, Trugi orala. Then Trulbe Netan the Topala, Tematapi, the Topati, be Kalachakra, Yimbare. La Tematapi, sinking the Tanda Tini Zo. Candidela Kagye origin, Hipatela, Jenchegio Mare. Aranso non tutto Hipakari, Yinay, Jenchegio Marella, Teniti Tanda Hipati Canicegio origin, Tema taught the soon Hipatili Gegio. T Tema taught the soon Hipati Canicegio origin, T Tema taught Getting Humali, KTJ, Perna Cho Papa Nahinti, Chotambo de Canipagi origin, Chotinba, Yentul Choka. By Yentul Pagi, whatever. J Pab, Janchi, J Pab, Janchi, but of my Hipa in Tombo, J, Yan Janchi, Yan J, Janchi, but my Koshara, Pagi, whatever. Tela Tematapi, Tematapi, Telatini, Truba in Nainda, Mantruba in Nainda, Te Takpa, Tambo, Madapala, Tini, Rimbi, Takpala, Yan Juria, Bandam. That in data. Ya Japang Yambanda comes on ya, Tambo Yapuyo, teach do.
When we're confused about the way things are, then in that confusion we have the immediate mind, and because of the immediate mind, it's really because of that we are confused. And so when we are able to transform that, then that is very important. So it is a very important point to be able to transform it. And so here we say the immediate mind, and when we say the immediate mind, what primarily is it that we mean by saying immediately mind? Well, our mind is something that is an unbroken continuum. It's we have, in each moment we have a new cognition that arises, and then where does that come from? It comes from the cognition that immediately preceded it. And where did that come from? That came from the cognition that immediately preceded that. And then for that came from the one that immediately preceded that. And so they each come from the immediately preceding cognition. And so in that way, it's like water that comes down, falling down in a mountain brook. When you have water that's racing down a mountain brook, it's not like you have one bit of water that stops, and you have another bit of water. It's not going, but there's not a piece of water, and then it stopped, and then another bit of water, then it stopped, another bit of water. It's not like that. You've got a continuous flow of water going down. Just flows smoothly on down. And so in the same way, the immediate mind is like that. It's one moment of mind immediately falling on another, immediately falling on another. And so in this way, we have this continuum of the mind. And so then whether we are confused or whether we're not confused. When in the impure times, if we meditate, we can gradually improve it and begin to change it and make it better. And similarly, when it's pretty good, if we start misbehaving and doing naughty things, then it'll get worse and worse and worse and worse and worse.
Thank you, Rinpoche.
Rinpoche, I just wanted to ask about wisdom, compassion, and power. Power, Wang, energy, Qi. Are those part of the clarity aspect? And just, I'll start with that.
Shentong kense nu sum shebe kaso de nupa de la de saja double la gogenas nupa de la ane longdan de saja double la gogenas.
Chimba to Zia, Joy Sarchatin Chimba Kugura, sarchala kogre la tin tsewa ti tela tin ta salbon chin di tsewa de rang shu gong ge ba jai da nupa ti top na bu jil kog marbe top ti top da nupa ni ki ba da jil.
Okay. The clarity is primarily the knowing, the wisdom, the knowing. We have knowledge, love, and power, wisdom, love, and power. That is what we mean by the clarity aspect. And then when you know everything, then naturally you'll develop love and affection. And then at the same time, there is power or capability or strength at the same time. So really here, the strength and the power are the same thing.
Those are things that you can't see with your eyes, like energy, something you can't see, but you can sense it, you can feel it. Nonetheless, even though you can feel it, is it still empty?
The data na the miki tonju meba da ina the nyamsu nyonju yores it's sort of ke yores the nyamsu nyonju kinsu nyusum de sora nipa de nyamsu nyongna de ngo thompa na ina
nupa sinki te kandisi yungu yores na perna tanda ta sanji 점딘 디지 담비 추추 걸어와래. 대 간데레세는 담비 추 디기 생기 mambo la 페인트 오브체도 걸어. 디 뉴바데 간데 용기 요레센 단다 ngaransoln다고 제이나. 디니 로 니동 ngaja ngachu 담반 로사래. sanji 점딘 디 냥엘인데. 로 니동 ngaja ngachu 담반 로사래 디 송지 점딘 디지 추추 걸로 거르니 콩게 이히 뉴바데 다다 용기 요래. 단다 ngaransol라 용네 다테 타 림보 두치 젠 림보 제테 티 누바티 콩게 이히게 누바티 용기 와라 단다 ngaranso 제 추엘라 대바지 제주요나야 카히 깝깔라 당 ngaranso 그때 답 노한다 보다 ngaranso 깔바상 보레데 깝깔라 산지게 누바 레데 산지 좀 된데 지금 그만 추좀 걸로 꼬리가 아프게 누발라 뛰네 단다 용기 와라 티 누바티 내시 통주 매바다 보세나 통주여 바다 보세나 이가 한다 보지 말.
When we talk about the power of the Buddha, let's take an example of that. What is the power of the Buddha? To take an example of it, the Buddha turned the wheel of the Dharma. And why did he turn the wheel of the Dharma? He turned the wheel of the Dharma in order to help sentient beings. And how did that come? That came out of the power of the Buddha. And so what is this power? Well, here we are now. It's 2,550 years since the Buddha passed into parinirvana. And yet, the Buddha turned the wheel of the Dharma, and that power of that wisdom is something that can still come to us. It has come to us, and it has come to us from a long way away and a long time ago. And that comes about because the power of the wisdom of the Buddha. And so some of us, we feel we have faith in the Dharma, and some of us this comes about from pure appearances, and for some of us it just comes about because of this power of the Buddha, the power of the Buddha. And so he turned the wheel of the Dharma a long time ago, but because of the power of that, we are able to have it. So whether or not we can see it or whether or not we can experience, however we experience it, there's that power that's still present.
로 니도 ngaja 공 ngaja 그 공라 산지 좀 된지 주지 걸로 거메나. 드링아랑 그 주기야 이거 말이 지나서 주니야 이거 말이. 이 누발라티니 용이여라.
So when the Buddha passed into parinirvana 2,550 years ago, I wasn't here to teach you all Dharma, and you weren't here to listen to me either. And so this is really all coming about because of the power of the Buddha, isn't it?
Thank you, Rinpoche.
Cho